Hi everyone and welcome to SWPL My Story, and today we are joined by a special guest. We have Eva Murray, who's a councillor for Gascaden and Scotstoun Hill, along with us today. How are you, Eva?
I'm good, thanks, Martin. Thanks so much for having me on. Looking forward to a good chat.
No, not at all. It's always good. We like trying to be a wee bit diverse and coming at football from different angles. So having a City of Glasgow Councillor coming on and talking about initiatives that are going on in the city and opportunities that you're trying to work on and different initiatives, it's always good to hear that type of thing. So, just for the viewers and the listeners, just tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into politics, obviously your love of football, and how you can kind of merge the two now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've had quite an interesting journey. When you asked me on, I was kind of doing some notes, and I was like, oh, it's quite an unusual way to get into politics and football. So I've loved football from a very young age. I played in a mixed team that started with my boys' brigade team when I was in primary school. There was only three girls in the team when they eventually let girls in. When the youth games started, just before the Commonwealth Games, Glasgow put a bid in for Commonwealth Games. They had an initiative for primary school kids to get more involved. They had the youth games, and I kind of got picked a few times for my school to play for my school. But unfortunately, the primary school didn't have a official team. When I went to secondary, they didn't have a team either, and I think they do now, which is amazing to see. But they didn't when I was kind of growing up. And then I kind of got an ankle ligament injury, and I just kind of fell away from playing. And even though I wasn't playing, I always kind of took that interest. I always kind of kept that interest. I got caught up with the US Women's National Team hype of the 2010s. I even travelled to New Jersey to see Sky Blue, who are now Gotham versus Western New York Flash in the inaugural game of the NWSL season that year. I got to see people like Kelly O'Hara, Sam Kerr, Abby Wambach, and Christy Rampone, which was amazing. And again, just kind of showed me why I should be interested in this. And then when I went to uni, again, took quite an interest in women's sport and women's football. I went to UWS. It's not known for having a huge kind of a sporting background in terms of teams. So I thought, how can I use my degree to kind of pursue that interest? And I did broadcast production at university. I think a lot of people think I might have done politics or something to do with international relations, but I did broadcast production, which I like to sum up as the behind the scenes of TV and radio. Like I say, I was at UWS, and it's a brilliant place for with great lecturers who have practical experience in the industry, who encourage and motivate people to kind of use their passions in whatever kind of area they are in. And I love documentary making or investigating issues that I believe weren't really getting the attention they needed, and I felt people would be interested in hearing more about the behind the scenes. And one of those issues was women's football. So I had many great experience, and again, thinking about it all when you asked me on, and just some of the crazy things we did in first year at uni to try and get top players on our it was like a podcast. It was more like a docudrama like podcast thing. And we did, I wish I could find it, but we did one in the run up to the must have been the 2013 again UWCL matches in Glasgow, and Glasgow City were on it, and Glasgow City had Welsh international Jess Fishlock on loan from Seattle Reign. And I just remember this absolute struggle of first year uni students trying to find a venue to interview Jess, and we agreed to meet her in some community centre in the East End of Glasgow, I think. And the fire alarm was going off, and the three of us were trying to get everything working. And to be honest, it was an absolute riot. But Jess was an absolute pro. She was an absolute star, and it's just been amazing to see how her career has soared. And we got to interview Kim Little as well when at the match, and I think that's kind of where I kind of saw that side of it, and I kind of kept that throughout my kind of university career, trying to do a bit more at women's football. And obviously politics was a huge part of that as well. I did some documentaries and podcasts interviewing politicians, but I always kept that interest in women's football. And I was really lucky that I had classmates who would all kind of pull together each other's interests, and if we had an interest in something, we would support each other to try and pursue that. We did a chat show in the run up to the 2015 Women's World Cup again, and I wish I could find the setting. It was set up like some sort of loose women thing. It was very, very odd, but we had football shirts all around the kind of class studio. But yeah, I was really lucky in that. I've seen a number of my classmates who've went on to work actually for SWPL clubs, like including Celtic and Glasgow City, and a couple of them got to work with the national team in the kind of media and comms side. So it's been exciting to see that. But obviously, I went down another route. I've always had that interest, but I got elected to the council in 2017, a couple of months before I graduated, at the age of 22, and I've been there ever since. And you know, I don't play as much now due to time commitments. I just get the odd five or seven aside or a charity match but I'm always up for a match. I even played in a Keir Hardy Cup, which is was Labour Party kind of had a football tournament. I was the only woman in the full tournament, so I'm kind of working my way in my own party to try and get more women involved, but also the wider thing of trying to get more women and girls involved in politics, but also in women's football in the city and in Scotland. And politics has always been a huge passion of mine as well. My family are all very political, involved in the trade union movement, so it was really a choice for me whether to go down the broadcast route or the politics route or the kind of sporting broadcast route. And it's maybe something I'll go back to in the future, but politics kind of took over the last 7 years.
No, it's a really impressive backstory, and the fact that you were so young when you got elected and the things, and looking at it from different perspectives as a young person. Because probably I don't think I'd be wrong in saying politics is seen differently. If you ask someone to describe a politician, they wouldn't describe a young female from Glasgow. But having that different approach is obviously going to be beneficial for your constituents. So being in Glasgow, how have you seen the impact and the growth in the women's game in this country over the last couple of years, in particular, since the partnership with Sky, the broadcasting every week of the highlight show on the BBC? It's now more visual than it's ever been for young girls to see these women who have went on and become footballers, and it acts as role models to those children.
Yeah, no, it's been amazing to see. I think, like you say, it's just over the last few years, it's really taken off. And you look since since like 2019 when Scotland were at the World Cup, and I think that was one of the catalysts. I think was that for the first time, a lot of these young girls saw their heroes that they would normally go on a Sunday or a Saturday to go and see a major tournament, which is huge, huge for them. But like you say as well, the broadcast element, the money that's getting put into it, because big broadcasters like Sky and even BBC dedicating that the women's dedicating a show to the women's side, the women's football, it is huge as well. And I think if we want to progress the game, it is about visibility, and that's been a huge part of it, is getting it on TV, creating that space for people to actually see what's going on, watch matches. If they aren't able to get along to them, has been huge, and it has really taken off, which is brilliant to see. And I think obviously Scotland have done really well. But I think we can't take it away from the Lionesses as well. I think as United Kingdom, watching them and watching how the English game has grown has should give us some inspiration to see how it can take off. It's taken off in Scotland. No one can take that away from them. But just how quickly it has, and how people have invested in it in a much different way than they have up here. Obviously, we're getting people week in, week out turning up to matches, getting involved, but it just seems to be moving at a different pace in England. And for me, as a politician, seeing the amount of stuff that they're doing, they've just finished that huge review into the future of women's football, which was led by Karen Kearney. Is that something we want to do up here? Are we not? Maybe we're not at that level yet, but I mean, the issues are still the same. And for me, as someone who's interested in both sides, the policy side of it, but also the sporting side of it, I want to speak to as many people as possible, whether that's fans, players, people who are involved in the game, broadcasters. And what I'm trying to do to see what are the challenges and what can we do now. Okay, we might not be the level of England right now, but like I say, the issues are still the same. Accessibility to the sport, whether that's it's not on the curriculum for every young girl in Glasgow schools or schools across every local authority. Accessibility to pitches, whether it's not there's not enough pitches and they're always booked up, or it's financial cost. Things like that. There's still things we can learn from that review, even if we're not going to do a full scale one in Scotland just yet. And that's something I've been kind of trying to prioritise. But I mean, no one can take it away from Scottish women's football. The way it has grown, the way that crowds are growing, a huge part of that's down to people like the SWPL and the work that people like Fiona McIntyre have done. I mean, the Sky Sports Cup final just last week was incredible to see that record crowd, the fan zone stuff that was before it. And I think it's thinking creatively like that will bring people to the sport. I've been lucky enough to travel around to different parts, to different countries, and see women's matches in other places. And it is that little extras that you do that will make people come back, that will make people invest in the sport, or maybe take a chance if there's something else going on, like a fan zone, or activities at half time, or whatever it may be. But no, it's a super exciting time, and I think if we all kind of work together, politicians and other people, to try and fast track it, then I think the sky's the limit for women's football in Scotland.
No, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. We were along at the final as well, and all the stuff that was going on around the stadium beforehand to make it as appealing and as accessible to keep people coming back, because that's the key. Is it's great when they break another record attendance for a domestic cup final in the women's game, but you need those people to then go along and support their teams on a weekly basis. So with your position at the council, is there any specific initiatives that you're looking at or working on or planning on to keep this momentum going? Because something that we always harp on about on here is it's all down to the growth of the game. You've got your teams right at the top of SWPL, the money that's getting put into them to grow that side. But unless we get the foundations right at grassroots level at schools, that's the next generations that are coming through. So is there things that are going on in your part of the world that you are trying to help with that?
Yeah, I think it's a very challenging time for local councils. I think it's challenging time for people in, who are elected politicians and all over Scotland at the government level. But I think again it's about thinking creatively about how we can do things, how we can put things in place. And a big thing for me, I learned very quickly when I was first elected, was that if you can't work together, if you can't work with other parties, you won't get things done, especially at the council level. So I'm attempting to work cross party in a lot of this stuff. I've been not very successful, but I've been successful in finding people within the council who have the kind of same minded as me, who have got that interest in women's football, and wanna see it on the rise. And I think one of the big things for me was, when again talking to people, is that thing about what do we have control over at council level. Actually, it's very little when it comes to progressing sports, but we do have a say when it comes to curriculum. So big thing for me, probably what going forward will be trying to get the opportunity for women's or girls having the opportunity to access football at every school. I think the fact that every school doesn't have that on the cards already, or it's not an option for every girl, is appalling. Actually, to be honest with you, every girl should have the opportunity to play football and PE if that's what they want to do. Another thing is, and it's something again that I wasn't really aware of until the last couple of months, is that we still have red ash pitches in a lot of the schools in the school estate, not just in Glasgow but across Scotland now. Okay, it's going to cost money to upgrade them, but let's think about the long-term benefits of doing that, and actually how many people will be encouraged to play if the red ash pitch is gone. I was lucky enough to go to a secondary school which had a pretty nice pitch across the road from it, but I know every young person even now growing up doesn't have access to that. So I think again it's thinking creatively, but also lobbying those in other in parliaments, and I include my own party in this. It's us getting together and saying, look, we're working cross party to see how we can make things better, but also what are you doing? I'm speaking to MSPs and Labour, but also encouraging my colleagues in council to speak to their own MSPs to say, again, how do we work together on this? It's not just a case of putting a one-off funding into something when our national team is doing well, which of course is a good thing, which we saw before. Again, when they went to the World Cup, we saw one-off funding for a lot of the players to go full time, but also what are we doing to encourage young girls to get involved at the grassroots, and where's that long-term funding? And again, I know finances is always going to be the issue, but again, there are examples of how it can be done. Places around the world are doing it. We should be learning from that and working to make it a reality. But because we also know, again, out with the council, but I know what's happening in my community. I know there are brilliant initiatives already taking place. I'll name one just because I learned about it in the last couple of weeks and I thought it's brilliant. DRC Youth Project are an amazing youth project in my ward. They're in Yoker, and one of the guys down there, he's a youth worker, David. He actually used to be one of my old football coaches when I was playing 11s for a short period about 18 months ago. And he decided that he wanted to do a bit more work with the young girls A lot of them wanted to play football. They'd been to a couple of Glasgow City matches and a couple of Celtic matches, but they didn't really know where to turn to. So he just took them up to a pitch and started training them. And now I think he said he's got 6 or 7 of them. He's looking forward to starting that up again in the summer. And I mentioned this to the SWPL, and I said, look, this is what this guy's doing. He's taking them to matches. He's trying to get them the opportunity to play, and they actually got invited to the Sky Sports Cup final. Again, it's giving them the opportunity to see a difference it makes, but also that grassroots level. And the SWPL were, they were delighted at what was happening. But I mentioned that because the RC Youth Project were set up to give young people an opportunity, a second chance almost. And for so many of them, football is that. We see it in the boys a lot, but for girls too, giving them a sport, giving them something that they can take, learn about and become better at. It's a huge opportunity. And again, that's what goes back to so many politicians think it's just a one-off kind of bit of funding. It's just for that sport, but actually it's got so many more benefits for people, whether it's health benefits, mental health benefits, giving them that second chance, giving them a bit of purpose in life. And I think that's why it's so important that as politicians we recognise that and share those stories. But no, the work that DRC Youth Project are just one of hundreds, if not thousands, that are going on in Glasgow, but also across Scotland. And yeah, that's one of my big things, is trying to encourage that more and share their story too.
That's something that always really interests me when we have people on here, and the tagline that we talk about is the story behind the story. And there's so many of those types of stories across this country that don't get the spotlight that they deserve. So it's great to hear that they got, and once the SWPL found out about it and invited them along. So that's what it's all about. It's about giving people experiences, and not everybody, very few will go on and be full-time footballers. Everybody can endeavour to try and do it, but there's so much more out there, and the benefits of being involved in a football team, even if it's just socially, emotionally, mentally, we can't stand in the way of progress and allowing that to happen. So there's one thing I wanted to touch on as well. You hosted your event at the City Chambers 2 weeks ago now, I think it was. You had some great guests along, and again, it was discussing the future of our game and where we've came from and how we can all do that together. So you just tell us a wee bit about what that event was and obviously who was there.
Yeah, no, definitely. So one of my big things is that one of my big pet peeves is when politicians kind of just tweet their support when things are going well or the national team does well, and that's really it. And I wanted to kind of show that not all politicians are like that. So I'm very fortunate that I get to work in the City Chambers, and that means I get access to some of the great rooms in there, and I can host events in there. So I decided that being around about International Women's Day, Women's History Month, that I wanted to kind of host an event on the future of women's football. And we were super lucky that we had representatives from each of the 4 Glasgow teams that compete in the SWPL. We had Rachel Donaldson from Partick Thistle, Kelly Clark from Celtic, Nicola Docherty from Rangers, Fiona Brown from Glasgow City, and Fiona McIntyre from the SWPL, and Laura Montgomery from Glasgow City, obviously chief exec there. But yeah, it was an amazing event, and again, it was just an opportunity for all these people in the room, and give them an opportunity to tell their stories and their journeys, and kind of inspire those who were in the audience, but also to talk about what their kind of hopes for the future of the game was. And the last question I asked them all was, I think we had a cross-party number of councillors in the room. We had a couple of MSPs, and we also had fans and people who were maybe just interested in the women's game. And I was like, what's your kind of message? And it was more about working together again. It's about the accessibility to the game, and just trying to get people along to it, because again, that's the only way we'll progress it. But I'm super happy how the event turned out, and I think it was a good opportunity for fans to ask their own questions as well. I think a lot of the questions were kind of aimed at Fiona McIntyre at the SWPL, which she did brilliantly at kind of answering them and giving it a really good insight into the work that she's championing, and she really is championing. I think since she's taken on that role, we've just seen things go from strength to strength in the league side of it, and that's even with I understand the kind of financial challenges that are there when she's competing against other leagues around the world. But again, she's already learning from in her wider role with is it the World Leagues Forum that she's on, what they're doing around the world and how she can bring that to Scotland. But again, it's about that thinking creatively, which she's definitely doing. But I also thought it was interesting hearing from Laura. Laura's obviously seen it setting up Glasgow City and being that dominant force in Scottish women's football for so long, and now seeing it as, especially in that top three of the SWPL, how competitive it is now, which is it's a huge thing. It's a great thing for the league, and it's a great thing for Scotland. But I thought it was also great to hear from Rachel Donaldson as well. I've always said this whenever I'm kind of asked about when I'm asked on to things like this, that I think Partick Thistle are one of the greatest success stories of Scottish women's football, seeing where they were 2 years ago, unexpectedly getting put up to the SWPL, and now back-to-back top six finishes, and competing, really are competing with the best of the best, all with being part-time. Rachel herself is a PE teacher, on top of being on top of being a footballer. And I think when we talk about the future of the game, we need to talk about that, how we creating that level playing field, because ultimately not every club is full time, not every club has access to the facilities that we know that maybe the top three have, and it's like, how do we kind of support that to be better too. But no, it was a great event, and I would love to do another one. I had a request to do one in Edinburgh, and I was like, I'll speak to one of my colleagues over there. But I think it would be great, and I'm happy to encourage people to try and do something similar, because it gets people talking. We got some great coverage. All the clubs kind of covered it in their own press releases and social media. And I think the next step for me would be trying to get some sort of forum together, or getting everybody, stakeholders in the room, and saying, look, how do we create a plan? What are the challenges, and what can we all kind of do? It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be an overnight fix, but what should be the priorities? But no, it was a great event, and I think everyone kind of enjoyed it. There was a lot more questions than we thought there was going to be, so not everybody get in. But no, I think I was quite nervous at how it was going to go, but it was almost sold out, full room, great pictures, great guests, and yeah, it was good.
Oh, that's brilliant, Eva, and it's really inspiring hearing, like, obviously your clear passion for it, and your attitude towards it, to try and work cross-party, and because, as you said, it's going to take everybody's effort to make this happen. But just wanted to thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us today.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me on, and happy to speak anytime.
Brilliant, thanks a lot, and thanks everyone for joining us on SWPL My Story.